They told you Charles II was the most inbred king. They were wrong. Every history class taught you the same story. The Habsburg king who couldn't chew, the tongue too large for his mouth. Charles II, El Hechizado the Bewitched. The poster child for what happens when a royal family marries itself into ruin. Here's what no one told you. Charles II was not the most inbred royal in history. Not even close. The person who actually held that record lived for 23 years. Buried 2 infant sons, died alone on Christmas Eve. And history forgot her entirely. This is the story they left out. The Habsburg dynasty once controlled more of Europe than anyone since Rome. Spain, Austria, the Holy Roman Empire, most of the Americas. For 2 centuries, they were the most powerful family on earth. They had one rule about marriage. Keep it in the family. Not metaphorically, literally. Between 1450 and 1700, more than 80% of Habsburg marriages were between blood relatives. Uncle to niece, first cousin to first cousin. Sometimes both at once. The logic was cold and simple. Marriage creates alliances. Alliances create rivals. Better to marry a cousin than hand power to a stranger. What no one understood, because no one could, was that each marriage was loading a gun. When close relatives have children, harmful genes that normally stay hidden surface. Both parents carry the same defect. The child inherits 2 copies. The body fails in ways that have no cure. 1 generation of cousin marriage is survivable. 3 is risky. 6 is dangerous. 11 is Charles II. By the time Charles II was born, he had only 8 unique great-grandparents. A normal person has 16. Some of those 8 appeared in his family tree more than 40 times. The gun had been loading for 200 years. His birth pulled the trigger. In 1656, the painter Diego Velázquez finished the most analyzed painting in Western history. Las Meninas. At the center, a 5-year-old girl in a silver dress. Her name was Margaret Teresa of Spain. She had already been promised to her uncle. His name was Leopold I, Holy Roman Emperor. He was her mother's brother. 26 years old when she was 5. He commissioned these portraits so he could watch her grow up from a comfortable distance and collect her at 14. Their parents had been uncle and niece. Their parents before that, uncle and niece. The same mistake, every generation compounding. Margaret Teresa carried 6 pregnancies in 6 years. 3 children died before their first birthday. 1 survived. Margaret Teresa herself was dead at 21, 4 months pregnant with her 7th. That one surviving child was a girl named Maria Antonia. Her inbreeding coefficient, the scientific measure of genetic overlap between her parents, was 0.305. For context, the coefficient for a child born of a brother and sister is 0.25. Maria Antonia exceeded that number. She was, in genetic terms, more compressed than the product of sibling incest. But we'll come back to her, because her brother was born a decade later, and his name was Charles II. His coefficient was 0.254. His mother was also his first cousin. One ancestor, Philip I of Castile, appeared in his family tree 14 separate times. He had fewer unique ancestors than a child born of a brother and sister. The gun fired the moment he arrived. Charles II was expected to die in infancy. And yet, he was still not the worst case the Habsburgs ever produced. That story comes later. His physicians prepared for it. His court prepared for it. He didn't die. He was nursed until age 5 because he was too weak to eat solid food. His jaw jutted forward so severely, that his upper and lower teeth never met. Chewing was impossible. Everything was pureed. His tongue was too large for his mouth. He drooled constantly. He didn't walk until age 4. He didn't walk steadily until age 8. He was also king of Spain at age 3. His mother ruled as regent. His court stood in silence around him. No weakness could be acknowledged. No illness could be named. Charles was Spain. Spain could not be weak. He married twice. Neither wife produced children. His first wife described the experience in a private letter. She called it indescribable. She was not using it as a compliment. By his 30s, Charles could barely stand without support. Seizures, hallucinations, constant pain. His body was failing on every front simultaneously. His courtiers, men who administered an empire spanning 3 continents, consulted witch doctors. They needed an explanation that wasn't genetics. They had one. The curse of the Spanish crown, cast by unknown hands. The reason for the jaw, the drool, the sterility, the seizures. They were almost right about the curse. They were only wrong about who cast it. Charles II of Spain died on November 1st, 1700. He was 38 years old. His physicians performed an autopsy. That report has survived 300 years. It reads like a horror story. His heart was the size of a peppercorn. His lungs were black and riddled with corruption. His intestines were gangrenous and putrefied. His kidneys were black. His physicians wrote that his body did not contain a single drop of blood. They listed 1 testicle. Modern geneticists reviewed the documented symptoms in 2019. They identified at least 2 distinct recessive genetic disorders. Combined pituitary hormone deficiency. Distal renal tubular acidosis. Both are rare. Both require 2 copies of a defective gene, 1 from each parent. Both, in Charles's case, came from the same ancestor appearing too many times. He was not bewitched. He was the end result of a 200-year-old mathematical certainty. His family had been making the same bet for 20 generations. By Charles II, the house always wins. But before we talk about the war that killed 700,000 people, remember what I told you at the start. Charles II was not the most inbred Habsburg who ever lived. We established his coefficient just now, 0.254. The person who exceeded that number had no visible deformity. No famous portrait, no nickname history remembers. Just a body that failed quietly. And an epitaph nobody reads anymore. You'll meet her in 4 minutes. Stay with me. Charles II died with no heir. The largest empire in the Western world had no successor. 2 men claimed the Spanish throne. A Bourbon from France, a Habsburg from Austria. Every major European power chose a side. The war lasted 13 years. It burned across Spain, France, the Netherlands, and Central Europe. It killed between 400,000 and 700,000 people. Think about that. 200 years of deliberate inbreeding. 1 man who couldn't chew his own food. 700,000 dead. The most powerful family in Europe did not fall to conquest. Not to revolution, not to famine. It fell to a marriage strategy. A French Bourbon named Philip V took the Spanish throne. The Habsburg line in Spain ended with Charles II. 2 centuries of empire. Ended not in battle, but with an autopsy report and a missing testicle. Every documentary about Habsburg inbreeding ends with Charles II. The famous jaw, El Hechizado, the end of the line. But Charles II was not the most inbred Habsburg who ever lived. That distinction belongs to his niece, Maria Antonia of Austria. Born January 18, 1669. Dead December 24, 1692. She was 23 years old. Her inbreeding coefficient was 0.305. Charles II scored 0.254. She exceeded him. She exceeded the genetic threshold of full sibling incest. She was the most genetically compressed human being the Habsburg dynasty ever produced. Unlike Charles, she showed no visible deformity. She was articulate, musical, serious. The damage was inside. She buried 2 sons in infancy. Her husband left for a mistress while she was pregnant with the 3rd. She died of childbed fever, alone in her father's palace. On Christmas Eve, her only surviving son, Joseph Ferdinand, was named heir to the entire Spanish Empire. He was 6 years old when Europe decided he was the answer to its most dangerous political question. He died the following year. His death removed the last buffer between 2 dynasties and a continent of powder kegs. 700,000 dead, caused in part by the death of a child, whose mother history forgot. The most inbred royal in Habsburg history does not appear in most textbooks. She was not the bedridden king with the famous jaw. She was a 23-year-old woman, buried beside her mother in a crypt beneath a church in Vienna. Her epitaph reads, "The dawn that extinguishes itself after birthing the sun to the world." The Habsburgs didn't fall to enemies. They fell because they trusted no one outside the bloodline. Every marriage designed to preserve power was a withdrawal from a genetic account that was already overdrawn. By the time Charles II was born, the account was empty. The most powerful family in Europe discovered something history keeps relearning. The attempt to hold everything sometimes destroys everything. Maria Antonia's sarcophagus is still there, beneath the Capuchin church in Vienna. A skull on the lid, an inscription no one reads anymore. History gave Charles II the documentaries. She got the crypt. If this is the kind of history they left out of your textbook, subscribe. There's another one waiting for you next Saturday.